Hi, I'm Corey. Welcome to Creating with Scraps. Today's episode is a little bit different based on a question I've received several times. And many of you, many of us, and many junk journalers love the Tim Holtz ideology paper. And you probably have heard that he is no longer going to be making this 12 by 12 size. And so other folks like me, when we find it, we purchase it. And when you buy these papers, you get full sheets of 12 by 12, but some of the sheets are broken down into individual squares or rectangles. And there is the sheet with 16 squares on it, 16 3 by 3 squares. And then there's a sheet, or a couple sheets, I guess, with 12 3 by 4 squares. And then there's a sheet with four 6 by 6 squares. And so what I'm focusing on today, and I've been asked repeatedly what I do with these, some of the different things that I do. And I was thinking about that, and I'd been using them in my own projects. And I thought, well, why don't I just do a video where I use one sheet of this? And so it's really easy to get mixed up when you're doing these. And you can do many of the same things, but these are square and these are not. There is a sheet or a couple sheets with 12 3 by 4 rectangles. And that is not what we're going to be using, or I'm going to be using today. I am using the sheet that has 16 3 by 3 squares. And that's what's going to be my focus. And all I'm going to be using for the projects themselves is this sheet and then some scrap bin, because I've got, this is the one that's my work in progress scrap bin, and I've got it off to the side over here. But I'll be grabbing little bits and pieces from that simply because we don't always use scraps. And let me show you what I'm going to be making. This one is just a simple one, and I made myself notes about how many squares you need to create the project. And this is just a simple little notebook that you can tuck into a pocket or anything, and that uses 1 square. This is a bonus, and it does not... it's an option with 2 squares. It's just a double-sided specimen type card, and uses a bit of acetate. And it's just another choice that you can use with 2 squares, but it's not in my original 16 squares. So I pulled it out to show you, but I don't know that we'll actually be making that one today. All right, so 1 square. And this particular one uses 3 squares. And I've gotten myself directional arrows so I know which way to cut the paper basically when I cut this apart. And this is kind of like a little matchbook style with, a little paper pad inside. And then it's a 2-sided, so again, you can tuck this into a pocket or something. And then the back side has a little pocket and just a little bit of a snippet on the bottom. Most of the time I put the string on these tags, but I did not put the string on the tags on all of them. So this one uses 3 sheets of paper. Actually, technically, it only uses 3 because this is from another piece. So 3 sheets of paper. So we've got 4 here. And then this one uses 2 sheets, but it also uses a leftover bit from a tag punch. So I used one for a tag punch, and then it has a little bit of a leftover bit. And this one's got a belly band with a journaling spot and then a tag, and then when you flip it over in the back, it's got a tuck spot with a tag in it. And sometimes I cut my tags from these actual squares because of the pattern on them, but you can also cut them from scratch paper. They're pretty basic tags, so whichever way you want to use it. And so if you choose not to cut some tags with your 16 squares, you will have enough left to make this too. So just depending on how you want to use it. I better put this back so I don't mess it up. This pocket, our project, uses 4 squares, and it again tells me how to cut it and how to align it. And did I not finish this? No, I didn't. Shoot, I didn't put, well, here we go. There is a tuck spot here. I forgot to fill this up. And there is a tuck spot here, and there's a tuck spot back here. I forgot to put the tags in there, and then a blank on the back so that you could either put it in your book or just make it an insert into your book. And then this one uses a total of 6 squares. I use 2 squares for the tucks and such. But on this one, there's just kind of a lot of real estate. So you've got a 1 pocket on the front, and then 1 longer pocket for a longer tag in the back. And then you flip it over, and you've got a tuck spot on the side. And then you've got a tag spot on the side. So this one little insert for your journal has 4 different pockets in there. So that's what we're going to be making. All right. The first thing we do, or the first thing I do when I start, is I'm going to cut this into sections so that I have them attached where I want them for these particular projects. And the way I do that is I cut, and it doesn't matter which of the different paper packs you use, they all have these 16 squares. So whichever paper line you're wanting to use. And if you don't have the Tim Holtz paper, you can still do this because it's based on 12 by 12 paper. And you can cut out of whatever paper you've got the same configuration in 3 by 3 sections. So for the sake of this, my first cut is going to be, well, here, I'll bring my trimmer over, my big trimmer over, and I'll show you. The first cut I want is this, where is it? This one. I'm going to cut for this project. And I need to cut along the bottom. I want those 4 squares connected. Well, it only needs to be 3 squares, but I want those 4 squares connected. So I am going to line this up. I just use, rather than using my numbers on my trimmer, I just line the paper up with the edge. All right, so that is my first cut. Okay, and then this pocket uses 4 connected squares. Can you see that? So this pocket uses 4 connected squares. So I want to make sure that I cut 4 connected squares. And I don't suppose it much matters which 4 connected squares I use. So I'm going to cut right down in the middle of this remaining section. So I've got 6 and 6. And I'm going to cut that right down the middle, if I can see where it is. Sorry if my big old head gets in there, but I'm trying to make sure I line it up straight. Okay. Now I need this to be 4 and 4, so I'm going to cut off either the top or the bottom. And on this one, it really, really doesn't matter. And I think I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to cut these 2 off. So you get to choose which 2 you cut off, and I'm going to leave those attached. Okay, so I've got my bottom row that I've cut with 4 pieces. I've got this section with 4 pieces, this section with 2 pieces. Now I have my remaining 6 squares are like this, and I want to cut them straight down the middle of this. So straight down the middle of that. And those will be the sections that I'm working with. And if you're a person who is, and I'm done with the big trimmer. If you're a person who is using just a 12 by 12 sheet of paper, you are going to want 1 section of 3 inches by 12 inches. Okay. You are going to want 1 section of 6 inches by 6 inches. You are going to want 1 section of 3 inches by 6 inches. And you're going to have 2 sections of 3 inches by 9 inches. All right, so those are the pieces we're working with, and then we'll just go through them one at a time. I will start with this one since it's on top. All right, in order to make this particular piece or project, see, I made myself my little notes because I knew I would forget, and I will try to zoom in just a little bit. All I do for this one is I take this piece, and you can use a scoreboard if you choose to, but a lot of times you don't have to because of and then decide which one you want on top and which one you want inside. I think I want these colors on top, so I'll score this way so I can fold it back. And then I'm just going to score it in my frame. Yeah, I'm going to score it right down the middle at 3 inches. Again, you can just fold it in half if you choose to. All right, so I've scored it, and I'm going to fold it, and I'm going to press. Because even though it's scored, you can still move it a little bit one way or the other. All right, then the next thing I'm going to do is take a little bit of a divot out of this top. But before I take that divot out of the top, I am going to take 1 of my leftover sections. So let's see, I need 3 for this one, and I want to make sure that I've got 3 that I like. So I'm going to match this project up with this section so I don't make a mistake and use it in error. And then I need a 2 section one, 2 and a leftover from a tag punch. So that won't work. And then I need, for this one, I need that 4-inch long section that we made. So I'm going to put this aside. And that way I'm just preventing myself from using the squares that I wanted to use for a specific project for something like this. Okay, and the one that we're going to make is this 2 with the leftover from a tag punch. So I really need this 3-piece section to make this. So I'm going to, how am I going to do this? I'm going to put this aside too. Okay, so this is the bit I've got left. So what I want to do is decide which piece I want as my pocket. What am I going to put on the front? We'll see. Let's see. I've got this choice. I've got the funky face. Don't really want that. And I've got this, and I don't really like the flowers with the flowers, so I'm going to go with this piece. So I'm going to use my paper trimmer, and I want, as you can see here, it's about a 1/2 inch smaller. And so if this is 3 inches, I'm going to cut this to 2.5 inches. Right? Is that right? Yeah. 1/4 inch is a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to cut this piece to 2.5 inches. And I'm going to leave it attached to this because I may want it there later on. So I'm going to cut this to 2.5 inches. And this is going to be my pocket on the top, right? Let's put this trimmer away because I actually prefer this one for these projects because it's got a smaller area here. All right, so I'm going to ink this up, and this is going to be my pocket. But before I do it, I am going to take 2 divots out, and I want to do them at the same time because then I know my divots are going to match. And I'm going to save those divots and use them for something else. So I think on this particular one, I'm using a 1 3/4 inch punch, but any circle punch that you want is absolutely fine. And I'm going to use this to line it up and use the edges of those pages to line it up and hope that it's kind of close. And I'm going to put aside these divots because I'm going to use them for something else. So I'll put those aside. And now my divots are the same and it won't look wonky when I put it here. Now, on this project, you may not be able to tell. I'll pull it up. I sewed along the edges. So before I glued the sections together, I sewed along the edges here. You don't have to by any means. You can glue it, and for the sake of this project, I will glue it. But just know that you have that option before you glue this section together. If you want to sew it, this is the time you should sew it. And I'm going to ink the edges in here because it's much easier on this to ink them before they're glued down. And yes, that's the ink box in the background because it just makes my life easier. So inking around the edge. And you know what I didn't do? Look, you can see here, I forgot to take off the 1/2 inch on the bottom. And I really do want to take off that 1/2 inch on the bottom. So I've cut one side to 2.5, and I even have that note on there. I should have done it, but it's not too late. So I'm going to move this over and take this down to 2.5. And I am saving both of these pieces because, where did I put it? Oh, one is on the card still. And then I am going to save that piece because I'm going to use it for something else. All right. So now it's cut down to the correct size of 2.5 by 2.5. And I am just going to ink. And because I'm not going to sew this one, I am just going to put a fine line of glue on the 3 sides that that don't have a divot. It's not going to hold anything heavy, so I don't need much glue at all. I just want to hold it in place. All right. And I'm going to put this, I think I want it down a little bit towards the bottom and right about there, centered. Yes, this line shows, but it won't show once I put my tag in. All right, so I've got my pocket on it, and I might as well go in and ink this pocket as well. At the top where I cut out the divot. All right, so, okay, this is my front. Now this tag, I used this piece or something similar to it to make my tag. And the way I'm going to cut this one is 2 inches, and I'm going to leave the length at 3 inches. So I want to cut this one, well, that's really pretty, but we'll see. I want to cut this one to 2 inches wide. just because it fits in the pocket well and I can use that extra piece. So here, I'm going to save that scrap as well. So I've got the divot scraps and then the 2 other scraps I made, and I'm putting those aside because we're going to use those. And just to ink this up a little bit. Now I'm going to take one of the 2 divots, whichever one I think matches the best. And, you know, the beauty is I've got 4 sides. You know, I've got this 1, 2, 3, and 4 sides. I kind of like that, but I also really like the letters. The letters add interest, so I'm going to use that one. I'm going to ink this cutout divot, and I'm going to glue it down to the top of the 2x3 card that I just cut. All right, 2x3 card, and I'm going to try to get it mostly centered. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I wouldn't mind it mostly centered. All right, glue that down. Make sure it's flush. If you don't put it flush, you have a little bit of wiggle room with art glitter glue, not a ton, but you can always come in and trim it when you're done and the glue's dry too. So I will ink quickly around the edge, and then I'll just take a hole punch, and it doesn't matter, you know, if you have a regular hole punch or the crocodile or whatever, and I'll go in the center. And a lot of times I'll use the edge of this curve with the bottom of my curve to get me to the right depth, and then I just try to eyeball where the center is. And sometimes I get it and sometimes I don't. All right, and then that is the tag for the pocket right here. And it's 2 inches, and I cut it to 2 inches so that it would easily fit in, because remember I glued the edges of that down. And I left it at 3 inches because I wanted it to be a little bit longer. I wanted it to kind of bridge that gap between the 2 sections. All right, and that is the front of this. And we'll flip it over to the back, and I've got 2 bits on the back. And what I did here is I used this remainder, or this leftover section, and I made a side tuck. And so I'm going to come in really quickly with my ink. I mean, I'm covering that up, which is pretty, but, you know, for the sake of ease here, this works well. All right. And side tuck, side pocket, whatever you want to call it. I could take a divot out of this, but I don't need to for this particular thing because of the length. I know that it's a side pocket. And then I'm going to come and glue the top, the back edge, and the bottom. Just a little bit of glue on each. And put it down here. And honestly, most of the time I don't hold these in place because I'm lazy. I get a stamp block, and yes, this has got all kinds of glue gunk over it, and I'll hold it down while I'm doing my next piece. All right, so I still have this and I still have this. Now I am going to use this to build the scrap cluster that I built on top here, and that's where my scrap bin comes in. It's one of the places, and I've got a little tiny bit of lace that I put off to the side that I intended to use. And so I've got this, and now I want to pick a couple of pieces that I think work well to make that stand out. And I'm just going to go, literally, this is my current scrap bin. I have lots of scrap bins, but this is the one I'm using right now. And that little brown piece was on top, and I like the way it contrasts. So I'm going to ink that and make the decision to glue that. I know that wasn't staged. That just happened to be there. It was left over from the last little scrap that I put on. And does it matter which side I want it on color-wise? Yeah, I think I like it better there. And I just use when I'm making these, I just use a tiny bit of glue to hold it in place, because most of the time I sew these. And I'm not bringing my sewing machine over. I've got it set up behind me on my IKEA cart. But I will probably sew these as well because I like to, and it just takes a moment. All right, so I've got my first 2 pieces together. And I know that I have this little bit of scrap lace that I salvaged from a pillowcase. And I really like that, and so maybe I'll put that here, a little bit of that here, but I need something a bit wider behind it. And so this is exactly what I do. Oh, I like the color contrast of this. Let's see, maybe I can use this. Let's see, maybe I didn't make that wide enough, but we'll find out. Yeah, see, oh, I like the color contrast that gives me. So I am going to come in and put a little bit of glue there. And these 2 scraps, I'm going to lay them on top of that. And I don't worry too much about that glue. 1, because it dries clear, and 2, because I'm going to put my little bit of lace there, I think. All right, and then I'll just tear, and even I would throw away that bit. And there. Oh, tore a little bit more than I wanted, but that's okay. Now, if I were wanting a lot of ink, I would put a piece of heavier weight cardstock behind this. But I just want a smidge of ink. I want a little bit of that color. So I'm going to do that. And then this little scrap of lace. This is why I save little itty bits of lace, because I truly do use them. Let's see. Do I want it this way? Yeah, I kind of like it like right there. And I think I like that length. All right, yeah, I think I kind of like that. Do I want it over a little bit more this way, a little bit more this way? Do I want a zigzag stitch or a straight stitch? Those are all things that you can, maybe I want it just like that. These are all things that you can choose as you're going along and play with. And you'll find, once you start playing with these a little bit, you'll find a style that works comfortably for you. What is aesthetically pleasing to you, and it'll largely be based on scraps. And that's one of the things I like about using scraps. Usually when we have scraps, they're in colors and patterns that you already enjoy. So when you make little pieces with those, it's already in things that you're drawn to, and it just makes it a little bit easier. Now, I think I want a little bit of color behind that. Yeah, oh yeah, I like that. And most things are torn, so maybe I will make this straight, but maybe I won't. Maybe I'll come in later and tear it. And that's a little too wide, so I'm going to tear this down a little bit more. And that was just a piece of the top of a blueprint that I had purchased, an old blueprint. And, you know, I think it's still a little too wide, so I'm going to come in and tear it again. And that's the beauty of scraps. I mean, if it doesn't work, you just tear it. And if you really don't like it, throw it away and start over. I mean, it's a scrap. But I like the color contrast, and I like the words. So I'm going to put a couple dots of glue here, and then I'm going to go sew this in place. And I think I'm going to put a zigzag stitch on there, a simple zigzag to hold it. And okay, so as Gail says, talk amongst yourselves for a minute while I go do that, and I'll be right back. I wish I knew how to pause it and start it again, but I don't, so I apologize. Okay, so I'm at my machine, sticking it under the machine and just making a simple line to hold it together and to give it the stitched look interest. And I used a straight stitch down where the lace was, and no, I think I'm gonna use a zigzag. I don't really love the straight stitch. And that's another beauty of it. You can change your mind and stitch right over it. And okay, stitching. You can probably hear it. And that's one of the reasons I just use a small amount of glue and I let it dry, because it doesn't gum up my machine. Okay, so here is that piece. I'm going to put this big old scrap bin out of our way again. And this is dry by now, so I'll move that over. And bye-bye scrap. All right, I'm going to cut off my strings. Some people like to leave the strings, and if you're a person who likes strings, go for it, leave them on. I generally don't, so I usually cut them off. And I often most often sew in off-white. So I'll make several bobbins at once, like 8 or 10 bobbins at once, because I can ink it to change the color. So a lot of times I use the Gutermann off-white thread, for anybody who cares. And then I'll come in and just give it a smidge of ink. And I'll give it a little bit of ink here. Okay. And, oh, it's a little bit longer, but that's okay. It won't impede it much. And I can always, you know what? I can always tear that down. If it's too long, I can alter it. And I want it right there, and I want it like that because I made this into a tuck spot. And that's what I'm going to do. So because I want this to be a tuck spot, I am just going to glue over here where I've got the stitches. I'm just gluing down that one edge so that I can use the rest of it as a tuck spot. And I put a goodly amount of glue on there simply because I want it to be able to hold something. I'm not really 100% sure what I want it to hold yet, but I want it to hold something. And then again, I'll come in like this. And you can see here, I put just a little bit of a something on that. And I'll probably do the same thing here. I have this little, this was a table runner, I believe, and it had all kinds of pieces, but it's actually a little bit big for this. I don't love that. So I'll come in later on, and like this is just a little bit too big. I really like the piece, but it's too big for this. So I'll come in later and fuss around with it. Maybe I'll put a label, like a Tracy label on here, or a little flower like I did on something else. But I'll come in and finish that up. And then at this point, I just use scraps. You can see here, this is just a scrap of Braille paper, and it's a journaling spot, tucked it in. Now this is where you can use your extra pieces or not. I got a couple of these Fiskars punches. There's one with a round top, and there's one with a rectangle top, or a pentagon type top, I guess. And I use these quite often because they fit these pockets pretty well. But I used one of the papers to make a little tag. And you don't need to see me make a little tag. I mean, you know how to do that. So, you know, I would put a tag here, and then, you know, maybe a journaling card right here. And then on the front, I can decorate this, put a little bit of string here, what have you. I can put a tag or a label or a flower or something on the front, decorate it as I choose. And I just put, oh, we should probably glue this together, huh? Okay, the last step on this, because if I were sewing this on, like on here, I sewed this side tuck on. I chose to glue it here. But if I were sewing it on, I'd want to do that before I glued the whole thing together so that the sewing or stitches would be on the inside. So my very last step is to come in and just put glue along the edge, the side, one side and the bottom. And again, you don't need a lot of glue because it's not going to be holding a lot of weight. This is just going to be a tuck or an insert inside of a pocket, inside of a journal. Though you could, of course, use it as a pocket or another piece if you chose to, but this one's two-sided, so it might not work well that way. And then I'd come in and I'd trim up any uneven edges because sometimes I don't close them evenly and ink around the whole thing. And so I've got a double-sided pocket using 4 plus 4, 5, 6 of those 3x3 squares. All right. And that's all there is to that. Again, you can finish it up at your leisure by putting a tuck spot item here and a tag here, or some tickets or whatever you want. But that is our first piece. All right, done. Moving on. And that one probably took the longest, so hopefully the rest will go a little bit quicker. Next, let's do this one, this long piece. So we're using the ones with the most squares first. All right, I'm going to put that aside so I don't forget. Put this over here, and I still have this, and I will use it later on. All right, this particular piece, I used 3 squares and then an extra square if memory serves me right. Now, I have to think about how I did this, but I have an idea. But I'm pretty sure, let's see, maybe I should read my directions. Oh, here we are. 4, 3, and 1. Okay, that was helpful. Oh, I know what I did. All right, I remember now. Okay, so I cut off 1 square, and I'm going to cut off this particular square. Not because I dislike it, but because it's kind of got a good neutral print. So I cut off 1 of the 4 squares, and I'm left with this. Okay, so I've got 3 pieces. This center piece, I am going to take a divot out of, and again, I can save that divot to use at the top of a tag, and I'm going to roughly center it. And I am going to ink that. The rest I can come in and ink later, but it's much easier to ink these now. All right. Okay, and then the way I create this one is I fold this pocket in the back. That's my back piece. And I chose this one simply because I think that's really pretty and it doesn't need a lot of decoration. Now, if you can just fold it without scoring it, just match up your lines, but you can also score it. So whichever your personal preference is. I am just going to fold it, okay? And then the front gets folded like so. All right, now, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. I'm going to do one thing differently. This piece I am going to cut, but not quite in half. I want to make a pocket at the bottom here, and I want to have a little bit left over for my tuck spot right here. I want to have, you know, my tuck spot here and my pocket here. So what I'm going to do is take this leftover piece and I'm going to cut it at 2 inches. I'm going to cut it at 2 inches, and that way I've got my pocket. And that one's actually deeper than the other one. I probably should have cut it smaller, but that's okay. It works. You can cut it at 1 3/4. I think that's what I had intended to do. So let's just recut it. I'll save that scrap for something else. 1 3/4. When you cut it, don't cut it at 2. Cut it at 1 3/4, just because it's a better fit. And I'm going to ink around all the edges. And I am going to glue this in place. Now, I could glue it here, or I could glue it here, right? I could glue it on the back to make a back pocket, but I really like that picture, so I'm not going to glue it back there. I'm going to glue it right here. And I'm going to glue 3 sides again. Not 3 sides, I shouldn't say that. 3 edges. The right side, the left side, and the bottom. So I'm gluing 3 edges, and I don't need to get a lot of glue because I'm not putting anything super heavy in that pocket. Now, good point. I'm glad you said something. You're going to notice this is a little bit wide, and it's because of this fold right here. So what you can do, and what you should do, and what I didn't do, learn from my mistakes, is come in and take off about 1/8 of an inch. You know, you can use a paper trimmer, but even I can cut straight for that far. And make sure I've got glue again. And normally I don't use glue on my scissors, but that particular pair of scissors is old and it's been glued many a time. And I just use the adhesive remover wipes to get the gunk off. And then I'm going to line up my pocket, just like I'm so. Okay, because I don't want it to catch on that inside edge. I cut that one a little bit closer, but you get the idea. So I've got a tuck spot here, and I'm going to have a tuck spot here. And now I'm going to use this piece on the front to create a tuck spot on the front, just like we've got it right here. So I'm going to ink this edge. Ink that edge, and I'm going to glue it right like that. Now you'll notice this hasn't been glued yet, and I do that on purpose because if for some reason I didn't match this up or there was a bit of a gap or something, I could conceivably put a score line in here and wrap this around, because these pieces are going to be glued together. And in fact, here I made it flush. You can see I just made it flush with the edge, but here there's just a little bit of a gap, which will be covered with ink, so it really isn't a big deal. And then I am going to glue, whoops, let's put it that way. I'm going to glue this down. Do I want this side? Actually, I think I like that side a little bit better. Yeah, I do. So I'm going to ink this edge now. That's the nice thing about two-sided paper. It gives you additional options. Yeah, I like the contrast. And then I'm going to glue, again, 3 sides. And that just gives a little bit of difference from the pocket on the inside, because I made this part the pocket on the inside. That part showed. All right, and glued down. Well, almost glued down, lined up, glued down. And again, I would, go on and make something else and put this underneath my stamp block and let it dry. Okay, and ink all the way around the edges, la la la. And then you've got, I took away my tuck spot paper. You've got a tuck spot. You open it up and you have a whole pretty sheet. You've got a tuck spot, and then you've got your back pocket. And then the way we make our back pocket is the same thing we've done before. We're just going to glue this edge, the side edge, and the bottom. And again, these are really just, you could use them as mini pieces for mini albums, because I love making mini albums, but you can also just use them for pieces inside your more standard size album or traveler's notebook. Because of their size, they work with just about anything. All right, glued. Okay, and then that is my second piece. I've got a tuck spot here. I open it up. Pretty page. I could put a little envelope. I probably would put a little envelope here to tuck some tickets or something in. Maybe I'd put a paper pad back here instead of a tag, because a paper pad, it's a nice room. And then maybe a message or a note or something in this pocket. And you'd have room here to decorate because it's kind of a neutrally color. All right, so there is our second piece using these 4 sheets. So we've got both of those projects done. Okay, now let's move on to this one. And I'm going to have 1 piece of paper left when I'm done. And all of a sudden done. No, I'm going to have 2. See, I'm getting myself confused because I've got extra paper over here. Okay, this one is super easy and I really like it. And I think, yeah, I want this to be my top sheet because I like the paper and it's really kind of cool. So what I'm going to do is just fold this over, and I'm going to do it kind of loosely. I mean, I'm not pushing super hard, but I'm going to fold it over like that. Now I am going to come with one of my 2 tag punches, and I am going to make a tag out of this leftover section. So I've folded it over, and I'm going to make a tag out of this section. Now this punch is not an exact fit. So what I do, it's got a little bit of a leftover. Well, the bottom is straight. So I will line it up with the top so that I'm sure that my top will be correct. And then I just leave a little bit of a gap at the bottom. And I punch my tag. Now I've got a tag to go. And for those of you who may not be aware, these punches also have this little slot in the front that you can... I don't usually do it now because I want to make this a writing tag, and I'll take a piece of my scratch coffee dyed paper, and the side that I want it to be written on, I'll glue the coffee dyed paper here, and then once I've trimmed it down, then I'll come in and make the punch because it'll easily take the 2 pieces together. And you don't need to see me do that. I just put glue stick all over the back, put it down on a scrap of coffee dyed paper, and then trim all the way around the edges in case I didn't match it perfectly, because I almost never do. And then I'll come in, and if I'm going to make this type of a hole, I'll slide it in here and I'll make the hole. Okay. But this is what I've got left over here. And so I cut this little bit straight, and yes, I actually throw that away. I know, crazy, huh? And the reason I want to do that is I am going to fold this up. I'm not even going to score it. I'm just going to fold it up to make that matchbox style edge. Okay? Matchbox style edge. And then I'm going to ink this edge. You can round this if you choose to, but matchboxes, I don't believe, matchbooks, I should say. Matchbooks don't usually have a rounded edge, though you can certainly do that if you want. Okay? And then I just put, oh, Corey, see, I'm a ding-dong. I blew it. I totally blew it. This particular one was for the other one. What I did here is I cut off 2. Okay, you know what? No problem. I have an extra piece of the other kind, and I'll show you how I was actually supposed to make it from this, because I'm a dingbat. Darn it. Okay, I was supposed to cut off this entire piece, okay? I was supposed to cut this whole section right here, okay? And again, you're just going to fold it. And here, you are going to tear, let's see. That one should be straight. Let's see. Think Corey G. Like this. I'm going to do it like this. Okay, this one needs to be straight. And then I am going to, at about, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch or so, I am going to fold it up. Okay, this is a whole square. At about 3/4 of an inch, I'm making a crease and I'm folding it up. And then I'm going to ink this. Just disregard that other business I did. That's what we're doing for the next one. And I was confusing the 2. All right, so ink the edge. Fold it up. Now I'm going to tear along this edge. And I'll save this piece for a cluster. Okay, tear along that edge, ink this. And all you do here is you come in and you make your matchbook. And the way you do that is I don't glue the bottom. I glue just the 2 sides to the fold. I suppose you could glue the bottom, but you don't need to. I glue the 2 sides to the fold, the right side, the left side to the fold. Then I come in, remember I said this was going to be the front, this was going to be the back. I come in, I line it up, I push it down, just like so. Okay, so I've made myself a tuck spot or a pocket on the back. Like that, place for a tag, okay? Now, this little flap on the bottom here is what I'm going to wrap around to be the matchbook. And yes, I did fold this in half, and I did that for a reason, and I'll show you in just a minute. Then what I do is I get some scrap, here you go, some scrap coffee dye paper, okay? And I will cut this to make a little notepad. You can use just itty bitty bits and scraps if you want and just piece them all together, but I make this more of a booklet than a notepad, I guess. And so I'll cut them just shy of 3 because this is 3 inches wide. So I'll cut it just shy of 3, and I'll cut it just shy of 3. And then I'll cut these sections, same thing, just shy of 3. And again, they don't have to be perfect because we're going to come in and trim them. Because I have never, even if I cut everything with precision, I have never been able to just come in and fold it and have it work. I always have to trim it. So here I've got just 4. You can do 6, you can do 5, you can do whatever you want. Match these kind of up, and I fold them because that's, no, don't fold them. That's the other booklet. See, I'm getting my booklets messed up. Sorry. Just leave them just like this. And then I am going to come in with my clips. I'm going to line up one edge. I'm going to come in with my clips. Maybe I'm going to line up one edge. Okay. Line up one edge. Come in with my clips. And now I'm going to trim all sides so that they're flush. And I don't take off very much, and I don't need to. But I want to make them straight or flush. Okay, taking off a little bit on each one because I've already lined up the top, right? Okay. Take off to make it match. And then I come in and I put this at the bottom, right? Put the paper in at the bottom, and I get a stapler. I don't even use my Tim Holtz tiny attacher for this one. I use a regular old stapler, and I staple in the center, if you can see there, towards the bottom. I want to make sure I catch that paper in there, but I don't want to go down. I don't want to come up too much because look, you're going to tuck this in. And this is the real trick with this one. Notice how there's a little bump or bulge? Well, that's what matchbooks do because of the match heads on them. So what I do, and that's why I creased it first. So I've already got one crease. So I'm going to come back up and then make my second crease. I'm just going to push down so that the paper's where I want it. And I'm going to make my second crease. And then I've got that little itty bitty crease at the top. So I don't have to really score anything. I just use the natural lines of the paper to give me the crease that I want. All right. Sorry about messing up that, guys. And here is my matchbook. Okay. See, this is it. So I used 3 squares, and now I have a tuck spot in the back where I can put that tag that I made in air, right? There's a staple back here. So what I did is, I think I've got some over here. So I'll use one of my itty bitty clusters, right? There's the tiny, tiny ones. And then I'll come in, this one's probably even a little too big. And I'll put a little mini cluster on here or a decoration on the back like I've done with this one. That's a super tiny one to kind of hide that staple. But that way you can put it as an insert and you can use both sides. So you've got some tearaway paper for journaling, and you've got a little pocket in the back for additional journaling, or you can put tickets in there or ways to decorate your pages. Okay, there's that one. Last one. Sorry, I was combining the two and kind of messed everybody up, so I apologize. Where did I put the last one? Okay, here we go. This is the last one, and it's 2 plus leftover from Tag Punch. This is what I meant to do with the other one, and I didn't. Okay, so I'm going to use, no, I guess I won't. Maybe I won't. Okay, so this one, let's see how I want this to go. Actually, I can make that work. No, because it's sideways. I can't make that work because it's sideways. I mean, I guess I could cover up the birdie. I guess I could. Yeah, I can make it work. Okay, so here you do what I did on the, before I messed up the matchbook, okay? You come in with your punch and you punch your paper, and then you save the rest and you just trim it down like I did here, all right? And then you're going to come, see, this is going to be the front and this is going to be the back, right? So you're going to come in, I didn't make that straight by any means, way, shape, or form, but that's okay, that's fixable. It's paper, it's forgiving. I'm going to fold this over and make this my tuck spot in the back. This is going to be front, back, tuck spot in the back, okay? And you just orient it based on the way your paper is. Front spot, I kind of like it like that. So front and back, okay? So I am going to open this up now. And yes, this is sideways, but it's not going to look, you're not going to see it by the time we're done. So we'll be good. I'm going to take my divot out of here. And again, I'll put that aside and I can put it on the top of my tag if I choose to. And I will ink this up. Okay. And I am going to fold over and fold over. And I'm going to just put glue on the bottom and the side. And I put a lot on there, so that might seep out. So if it does, I apologize. Glue on the bottom and the side. Push it down. Yuck. Okay. And now I've inked this edge, and this is going to be my back tuck spot. This section right here. It's oriented the other way because of what was upside down, but just depending on how you fold your paper, like if I suppose I could do it like that. I don't see any reason why not. Oh, because I took the divot here. So I do need to make it this way. I'm going to put glue on the right and left side. And glue that down, and that makes my tuck spot. Doesn't really matter so much because of the way this is oriented. It's okay to have it sideways. And see, when you're inking these things, if you fold more than once like I did on this particular one, it doesn't really show. It kind of is all part of the pattern of the paper. Now, if you're using solid colored cardstock, it might show a little bit more. All right, so here we go. This is the back with our tuck spot, and here's the tag that we cut for them initially. Here is the tag. Okay, and then you flip it over to the front, and the section that we tore, because I allegedly don't have those, we have this one piece left, and we have this little torn piece. And I said I was going to make a cluster with the torn piece, and I made a cluster with this. So with this one piece that's left, I'm going to punch another tag. Oh, that's a pretty color. Okay, so I'm going to punch another tag, and because I did rectangle last time, I'll do square or do the circle top. And you can see again how I do that. I'll come over to the edge, and it's a little bit short. I just want to make sure that the top is completely in there. And I'll push that out, and then I've got this piece left. Okay. So here's my tag, and then I'll come in and trim this down. And if I think that's a little bit fat, I'll trim it a little bit more. Yeah, that is a little bit fatter than I would like. So I'll just trim it and use that extra section for something. And maybe I'll make this 3/4 of an inch. This one's probably 1/2 inch. So just to show you it doesn't have to be any certain measurement, I'll make this one 3/4 of an inch. Now on this one, I lived and learned. I put this belly band down a little bit too low. And so I'll learn from my mistake, and I'll put this belly band up a little bit higher. And it should be close to the right length because it's 3 inches, and we didn't change that. And so I'm going to put this up a little bit higher than I did on the other one. And do I want it up that high? Not quite. Maybe right here. Okay, so I'm going to put my glue on just the edges. And I'm going to put my belly band on the front with that little extra bit from the tag. And I will let that dry. I'll ink it all up. Again, ink hides a multitude of sins and errors and mistakes, and I mean, I like the way it looks, I like the way it finishes it, but it also works as, you know, a handy little feature. Now I would put a piece of plain coffee dyed paper on the back of this so I could use it for an actual journaling place, or I could even turn it in this way. And this tag goes up into the top, and then this is where I get just a little scrap piece of paper. And no, this one's not a good one because of the way it is. Here's a good scrap piece of paper, and I'm going to cut this down to, we're going to go 2 inches. Why not? It can be anything smaller than 2.5, I guess, would work because of where I put the glue. And then I'm just going to fold this in half. and ink it up, because that's what I do. Ink up the edges. I do a front and back and an inside. And then I tuck this extra journaling place right there in the belly band. And on this one, you can see here, I created a little cluster, and I said I would do that, so I will. Okay, here, which side do I want? That's too much the same, so I'm going to use the opposite side. I'll use this, one of the, oh, here's another one too. Nope, same color. No, I don't want that one. I want this one. And you can always do this with these little leftover bits and scraps and stuff. A lot of times I'll put them at the top, like I did earlier, and make it the top of the insert, you know, your tag insert. And sometimes maybe I'll do that with this one, whatever goes in, you know, this pocket or the back pocket or something, I'll put that on top. But here I'm going to use it as part of a cluster. And do I like those together? No, I don't really like that color with that. And so, oh, here's a little scrap. And that's kind of pretty much how I do it. I just grab a scrap and see, will this work? And if it doesn't, I'll grab a different scrap. It is no more complicated than that. And in here, you can see I've got 2 scraps, a piece of ribbon, a flower, and a ticket. So I'm going to emulate that. So 2 scraps, and then I'll put one on top of the other. And this needs to be inked because it does. And I will glue this down. But it looks like I put the ruffly edge out, so I'm going to put the ruffly edge or the torn edge out. I'm going to glue that down, just to kind of a little bit of glue to hold it in place. And this is a little too long, so I'll tear it. Okay, there's not the contrast in color here, so I have to be careful with what I choose for the back piece. So I'll bring my bin over. And I want something, oh, that's kind of pretty, but that's too thick. And that's a light color, but it's a different light color. Okay, I kind of like that. So I'll bring this in. And there's no reason on earth I can't have it behind both. Oh, these aren't the best scissors for that. All right, literally just a piece of scrap that was right on top. I'm going to put that in, and I would sew this down because that's what I do. Here it is. Sew this down. Oh, and it's a little bit long. So you can see for the piece that I've got in mind, it's a little bit too long. So I'll just come in and tear it, make this a little bit shorter. Okay. And this is a little bit long too. I like this end a little bit better. I like it off to the side like that. So I am going to come, and you know what? I think I want it a little bit shorter still. I'll save this scrap for something else. Yeah, I think I like it like that. And actually it's too close to the same, so I'll trim a little bit more off. Because I want the lengths of my pieces to be a little bit different. I don't want them all to end or stop in the same spot. Okay, and I'm going to go sew this really quickly. So as Gail would say, talk amongst yourselves. And yes, I realize I did not glue it, but that's okay for this. I don't even need it to hold in place because of just how I've got it assembled. All right, and sewn and trimmed. Okay, and I will come in and trim these strings off. Oh, I clearly need to get some new thread-only scissors. I keep some right on my sewing machine for when I'm there, but I didn't want to be away from the camera too long. All right. Oh, here's another bit. 2 ends to where you sew it. Okay, and cut, and then this would go right here. Yep, like that. I'm going to glue it down. Now you could use art glitter glue, but for this thin bit of sari silk, man, it's going to work just fine. I don't mean art glitter glue. I'm talking Fabri-Tac. I grabbed the art glitter glue. You could use Fabri-Tac. And then, let's see, on this one I used coffee dyed flower and a label. So I'll grab my bin with the little flower bits in it, and those are pink. This is not pink. Let's see if there's one with a little bit more coffee because it's a light paper, so I want a little bit darker color. Well, it looks like that's what I've got. Okay, coffee dyed scrap, just a little punch, and then I'll come in with my tiny hole maker and punch a hole in roughly the center of that. Close enough. All right, and then grab my little container of metallic colored. I have other colors, but this is just a little metallic color. And you're gonna love my my inspired method of picking one. Okay, first one I pick out is that one. So that's the one I'm gonna use. Now sometimes if I'm working with specific metals and specific shades, I'll be a lot more cautious, but most of the time I just stick my finger in and pull one out. Okay, and then I will fold this back, and I find I like these because they're little, but you can see, maybe you can see how long the prongs are on this. So a lot of times I'll just come in with my wire cutters and trim those down a little bit, because it still folds and it still fits and it still doesn't show, but because of the size of the flower, it just fits it a little bit better. See, I just chomp those off and hit the tripod on my way down. Okay, and then that went here, and then I need my little Tracy label. So I'll grab my bin with the labels. A lot of times I'll do this step at the very, very, very end, and I want a smaller label, so I'll just dig in the ones that are a little bit smaller. And see, like this, it's great, but it's just a little bit too big dimensionally for this particular tag. It takes over too much. So I'll dig through until I find one. And of course, the smaller ones usually skip to the bottom. Here we go. This looks like it might work. Yeah, that's a good size. And I like that color. So I'm going to come in, ink up the edges a little bit. Oh, and I will show you. Somebody had asked how I put the diamond glaze, not diamond glaze. What's this stuff called? I'll show you. The Nouveau Crystal Glaze, I guess. And so I want to put this one on first just to make sure. And you know what? I think I want it to go off the edge a little bit just to make sure that the flower fits on top of it. Okay, put that there. Here's my journaling spot. And then again with the glue, put this here. Put that down. Yeah, the colors are a little closer than I would like. So, oh, you know what? It's not even stuck yet. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make it a little bit darker because I used a lighter color paper here and I used a darker color paper there. So I'm just going to come in with my ink and make this a whole lot darker. I think it'll stand out more. And I need to put more glue on because I do. Okay. Yeah, that's better. Contrast is better. And that's the beauty of ink. You can change things the way you want them. All right. So, crystal glaze. This one's an old bottle, obviously. I've worn off the Nouveau label. This is Nouveau Crystal Glaze, Diamond Glaze, glossy accents. All of them work essentially the same. I just like that this one is self-leveling and it's smooth. And so what I would do, and this is how I do it when people have asked how I finish this up, I come in and I move it around with the tip of the bottle until it covers the entire surface like that. And then I just put it aside to dry. And it doesn't take long to dry because it's not thick. And the thicker you put it on, the longer it takes to dry. And then just don't touch it while you're letting it dry. Same thing over here on this one. I'll do the same thing. And I'll put it aside to dry. That is all there is to the crystal glaze. So that one is now done. Let's see, this one went here because this went with this. And I'll just try not to touch that little spot. Okay, so there's my little belly band. I've got my tag. I can put this tag in the back here. Obviously I didn't finish it, but I can come in and finish it later. So that is the last piece. So I'm not sure why that worked that way. Maybe because I wasted a piece. But the other item, because I had one left over, it was 16 pieces. I just literally took one of the 3x3 squares, folded it in half, put some book pages in it, and sewed it. So that was the other piece. This one, if you were wanting to make this rather than one of the others, it is 2 of the squares folded over, folded them first, and then I punched out the middle, and I think I used this size, punched out the middle, put scrap of acetate on the front and the back, and I would normally use flowers, dried flowers or something, but for the sake of speed and ease, I just grabbed 2 fussy cut butterflies that were the same size, glued them together, trimmed around and inked them, and put that in between. So that's another option. All right, those are the variety of projects. Let's see, the matchbook, right? With a space for a tag in the back, and then the paper scraps in front. So you've got your matchbook. You've got your fold over front and back pocket with a side pocket in the middle. We've got this 4 square pocket, I guess is a better way to put it. The four piece pocket that we, yeah, this was the 4-piece pocket. No, this isn't the 4-piece pocket. This is this 4-piece pocket, okay? With, here we go, a tuck spot here, a tuck spot here, or a pocket here, and then plain decoration in the front, back, and then a side tuck here. Oh, see, actually that would be a kind of cute little journal spot right there. Okay, so we've got those. And then this is the 4 one, the longer one. You've got a long pocket in the back. You've got a shorter pocket in the front with a tag that we created using one of the squares as well. And then you flip it over and you've got a, here we go, more scraps. You've got a tuck spot in the back, and then you have a pocket in the back here. So I have enough scraps to fill all those spaces, don't I? And then spot right here like this. Oh, ooh, that's not attractive. Okay, that's it. That is using one sheet of the 12 by 12, 16 square Tim Holtz paper, or any 12 by 12 pattern paper or double-sided paper or cardstock that you've cut into those dimensions. All right, long video. I hope it gave you some ideas. I hope it gave you some fun ways to use up scraps and to make bits of ephemera to stick in your journals. Take care. Thank you for watching, and happy creating.